A widow's debts nearly took everything, until a single dad rancher saved her heart. The town of Dry Creek was a place where rumors traveled faster than the wind, and debts weighed heavier than cattle in the branding pen. Mary Whitfield had learned that truth too soon. Her husband had been gone for almost a year now, taken suddenly by fever, leaving her with 2 children, a sagging cabin on the outskirts of town, and a stack of unpaid notes at the bank. Every month the banker's men came, tallying up interest that grew like weeds after rain. And every month Mary worked her fingers raw, sewing for townsfolk, baking bread, even taking in laundry, just to keep food on the table. Still, it wasn't enough. The cabin roof leaked. The cupboards were often bare. And the whispers, those sharp, cutting whispers from women in town, followed her like shadows. Poor thing won't last the winter. She ought to just remarry. But who'd want her with 2 mouths to feed? Mary kept her head high when she walked down Main Street, her daughter Lucy's small hand clutched in hers and her boy Samuel trailing behind. But inside, she was bone-tired, bone-weary. And then came the notice, pinned right to her door with a rusty nail. Final warning. Payment due. Property subject to seizure. She sank onto the porch steps, the paper shaking in her hand. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced them back, for her children's sake. If she broke, what would become of them? It was late that evening, while she was splitting firewood herself, that a shadow fell across the yard. She looked up, startled, the axe pausing mid-swing. A man sat tall on a chestnut horse at the gate, broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and a Stetson pulled low. He dismounted slowly, tying the reins with steady hands before walking toward her. "Evenin', Mrs. Whitfield," he said in a voice as deep as a canyon. She recognized him. Everyone did. Daniel Harper, a rancher who owned the spread just west of town. Widower, they said. Raised a boy alone after his wife died in childbirth. Quiet, hard-working, and respected. Mary wiped her brow, uneasy. "Mr. Harper, what brings you here?" He studied her a long moment, eyes lingering on the woodpile, the patched dress she wore, and the thin faces of Lucy and Samuel peeking from the cabin window. "I heard the banker's been circling like a hawk," he said plainly. "Word is, you'll lose this place by week's end." Her chest tightened. So even he had heard. "That's no concern of yours," she said, sharper than she intended. Pride was all she had left. He didn't flinch. "Maybe it ought to be." The fire crackled low inside the cabin that night as Mary thought about his words. Daniel Harper had offered nothing more, but his look, steady, unreadable, lingered in her mind. 2 days later, when she went into town to beg the banker for more time, she found Daniel already there. He stood in the bank lobby, hat in hand, speaking in that calm voice of his. "Her land ain't yours to take," he told the banker. "I'll see the debts settled." Mary froze. "Mr. Harper, I didn't ask." He turned to her, his jaw firm. "I know you didn't." The banker raised a brow. "And what's in it for you, Harper?" "Charity." Daniel's gaze never wavered. "Not charity. A bargain." He looked back at Mary. "A name. A home. For you and your young uns. That's my offer." The room went still. Mary's heart pounded in her ears. Marry him. Take his name. She barely knew the man beyond town talk and polite nods. Yet here he was, standing between her and ruin, offering more than salvation, offering a life. She stammered, her cheeks burning. "I can't just." "You can," he said, voice low but sure. "You've carried enough alone. Let me shoulder some of it." Lucy tugged at her skirt. Samuel's wide eyes watched her. The banker cleared his throat impatiently. Mary swallowed hard. I'll think on it." That night was the longest of her life. She paced the cabin, her children asleep on the pallet, while the wind howled through cracks in the walls. Could she trust him? Could she bind herself to a man she hardly knew, just to save her land? But what choice did she have? Alone, she was sinking. With him, maybe there was a chance. By dawn, her decision was made. Daniel Harper was already at work in his barn when she rode out at sunrise, Lucy perched behind her and Samuel clinging to the saddle horn. She dismounted stiffly, heart thudding. "I'll do it," she said, voice trembling. "If you're still willing." He looked at her long and hard, then nodded once. "Good. Pack your things. You'll move into the ranch before week's end." The days that followed were a blur. Mary packed what little she owned, 2 trunks, a patched quilt, a rocking chair. The cabin she left behind stood hollow, stripped of laughter, stripped of memories. But when she rode up to Daniel's ranch, she was met not with coldness, but with a home. The house was sturdy, whitewashed, with a wide porch and smoke curling from the chimney. Inside, it smelled of coffee and fresh bread. Daniel's boy, Thomas, about the same age as Samuel, greeted them shyly. Life on the Harper Ranch was no easy ride. Work began at dawn, with chickens to feed, milk to gather, bread to bake. Yet for the first time in months, Mary's heart eased. The children laughed again, chasing each other through tall grass. Daniel spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. And always, he treated her not as a burden, but as a partner. Nights stretched longer, softer. She would catch him watching her as she read to the children by lamplight, something unspoken flickering in his gaze. A warmth she hadn't dared hope for. It wasn't until weeks later, when a storm rolled in fierce and sudden, that the truth settled in her heart. The wind tore shingles from the roof. Rain lashed the windows. Samuel cried in fear, clinging to her skirts. She rushed to bar the shutters, only to find Daniel already there, strong arms bracing the frame. "Get the children to the cellar," he ordered. "But you—" "Go, Mary." She obeyed, her heart hammering. In the dim cellar, huddled with Lucy, Samuel, and Thomas, she prayed. And when Daniel finally came down, soaked to the bone but alive, she threw herself into his arms without thinking. "I was so afraid," she whispered. He held her close, his voice steady against her hair. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Not while I'm here." And in that moment, Mary knew. He wasn't just saving her land. He wasn't just giving her his name. He was giving her his heart. The next morning, when the storm cleared and sunlight broke over the hills, Mary stood on the porch of the Harper Ranch with Daniel beside her. The land stretched wide and golden, full of promise. Her debts were gone. Her children were safe. And for the first time since she buried her husband, hope bloomed bright within her. Daniel touched the brim of his hat, his eyes meeting hers. "This ain't just a bargain anymore," he said softly. "It's a beginning. If you'll have it." Mary smiled, tears shining. "I'll have it. All of it." And with that, the young widow who had nearly lost everything found not only a home, but a love strong enough to carry her through every storm to come.